initially, like 2, 3 years ago, my heart rate variability was around 50 to 60. After 2 to 3 years of optimizing my routine, I was able to get it up to almost 200. I think the single most important thing was cardio. Cardio was one thing. Second thing would be sleep, getting the best type of sleep. The HRV is basically an indication of how resilient you are to stress. If you're resilient to stress, that means you can do more.
Howon,
Oh, yep.
welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You have improved your heart rate variability so much that I have not seen anyone on the entire internet making such improvements in such a short time. First of all, for the listeners who don't know, what is HRV and why should anyone care?
Yeah, so you want to increase your HRV because it's an indication of how resilient you are to stress. So basically, higher HRV you have, the more energy you'll have throughout the day. But also, it's an indication of good resilience. You could even push your body to the limits. Also, there's multiple studies saying it's an indication of how long you'll live as well. So higher HRV, you'll have a longer lifespan. So that's some of the reasons why someone would want to optimize their HRV. Now, you might be wondering, how do we optimize it? And I think the key thing for me, the one principle that helped me improve HRV was drilling down, creating a routine that basically consisted of high cortisol in the morning, high stress in the morning, and low, low stress at night, and try and maximize that curve, that fluctuation over time. Because the main thing that helps with this, the main thing by doing that is it helps with the circadian clock. So basically, the more higher stress you have in the morning, your heart will have time to recover throughout the day. And basically, by nighttime when you're sleeping, your body will actually recover. And I think that's what produces better heart rate variability, in my experience.
What was your heart rate variability before and after, and how long did it take to get there?
So initially, like 2, 3 years ago, my heart rate variability was around 50 to 60. That was my baseline. And sometimes it would be at 40s. After 2 to 3 years of optimizing my routine, I was able to get it up to almost 200. So 197 was my actual peak. And then the main bottleneck for me was like exercise. I kind of dialed down the exercise part. And ever since that, my average has been around 140, 150 ever since.
200. So let me give a little bit of context. My heart rate variability around 4 years ago or 5 years ago, when I started wearing an Oura ring, it was about 40. Over the years, as I was losing weight, stopped smoking cigarettes, and fixing my sleep, and had a bunch of health results, it did not only increased, it actually went down. So around 35 right now, which is like I'm wondering if I'm dead at this point.
Oh no. I used to be at like I used to hit 30s as well. I think the main key thing is like if you're doing a lot of activities in the evening, that increases stress. So your heart's beating more. And basically you want it to be low. Like you want to that's why you want to do your exercise in the morning. And I feel like to optimize, talking about the topic of optimizing sleep, it's not just the sleeping aspect that's important, but we want to get better sleep. We want to increase our cortisol as much as possible in the morning to be able to get good sleep. I think it's kind of like a combination of everything that'll help you improve your HRV. So I would say in the morning, how we can increase cortisol is like morning sunlight is one thing, drinking water is another, and then high intense cardio. That's the biggest bottleneck. So high intense cardio or any kind of weightlifting, any kind of exercise helps. As for in the evening, if we could try and keep the temperature low, not eat at night, and take like a warm shower before and make the lights dimmer instead of having bright light, That are a couple of the things that really helped me improve my HRV and really boost it up.
Interesting. So I did pushed my workouts to the afternoon because I found my mornings as being the most productive time of my day, and I didn't want to waste it with workouts. You mentioned drinking water. I'm drinking water. I think everyone's drinking water. What did you mean by that?
Drinking water. Yeah, drinking water, basically, you're basically dehydrated overnight. So you get more blood flow, gets things going. If you drink water, it'll definitely help you raise a little bit more.
How much?
I would say water wouldn't be like the biggest bottleneck. I would say just getting your heart rate up. So exercise would be the main thing. And if you really want to maximize it, you want to go to be more specific in exercise. You want to target being at zone 4 to 5 around like 1 to 2 hours a week. And then perhaps for the rest of the workout, you could take it a little easy and stay in like zone 1 or 2 for like 4 to 5 hours per week. So I would say that's kind of like the Goldilocks zone. One of the main things I've realized when my HRV was around 198, that was a time when I would do 3 to 4 hours of zone 4 per week. And then usually how it works is I would do a really intense session for 3 to 4 hours straight where I'm in zone 4 to 5, for 2 to 3 to like 2 to 3 hours, maybe even four sometimes. And then the next day, my recovery, my HRV would be really, really low. And then the day after would also be low because my body's still recovering. But the way you get the peak is on the third day, my body would fully recover. And that's when you get a PR on your HRV. So one of the progressions example would be if my HRV was 100, probably after that zone 4 to 5 day, my HRV the next day would be about 60 or 70 maybe. And then it'll be really low. And then the next day after would be like 90. You'll kind of go back up, but still kind of low. And then the day after, you'll get 120 or 10 around that range. And if you repeat that cycle over time, I noticed you could really, really jump your HRV or increase your HRV really fast.
You're making these claims in such a nonchalant way. 3 to 4 hours of zone 4 to 5 a week. That's what you said.
Yeah, it's
So what would you say to people who call bullshit on that?
so I would say another thing is like I would say if I started from like 2 to 3 years ago, I wasn't able to run a mile in 12 minutes. Basically, like my friends would be like, "Come on, hold on, like keep running," and then I'll just be like, but if I were to do the zone 4 to 5, 3 hours, then I think my HRV would actually go down because I wouldn't be able to have the recovery capacity. So I think the smartest way is to adapt or condition your body to build it up to that position to where you could still recover while making improvements would be like I would say like the best way to improve it. When you program a workout to optimize HRV, what I would do is instead of going, I'm going to run 5 miles today or I'm going to run 3 miles a day, instead of that, I would actually target, I'm going to try and run 50 miles at zone 4 to zone 5. And if you actually run outdoors, if you run in a treadmill, you really have to sprint to be able to get your heart rate up. But if you're running outdoors, there's a lot of different variables. Like you have to weave around, you have to look around, and then there's wind coming in. So it's really easy to get your heart rate up, even if you're not going that fast. I notice it's pretty easy to get it up to zone 4 to 5, and that's kind of like the way I was able to keep it up and slowly build that progression.
That's interesting that there is a difference between heart rate if you're running outside or on the treadmill. Because one thing I started to do is to swim in a swimming pool. I'm having difficulty even getting into zone 2 by swimming because swimming keeps your heart rate so low. And then I was looking it up that okay, so I can't do zone 2 swimming. What's going on here? Should I even try? And then ended up concluding that it's actually not what matters is that what your heart rate is, because swimming, of course, lowers your heart rate. but swimmers actually measure perceived effort instead of zones. I'm wondering, based on this logic, if the equivalent of swimming to a treadmill run is lower heart rate, then would a higher heart rate of a street run kind of trick you into thinking that you're exercising more heavily than you would in a treadmill? Can you follow this?
I would say like a good example is like extreme example would be weightlifting. Because when you're weightlifting, it feels like your body is in excruciating pain, right? But your heart rate basically doesn't go up as much. Is that the same concept? Like with swimming, like you're actually feeling a little bit of pain here and there, but the heart rate doesn't go as much because you're holding your breath.
Wait a moment. Are you saying this from experience that while you're doing weightlifting, your heart rate is not going up that
Yeah.
much?
Mhm. Because
I
my
see.
average heart rate is about 90. So usually I think with optimizing HRV, heart rate is very important because it's not just me. I have a friend who used to live like we live 2 to 3 months out of the year. When he was at my place doing the same workout, like doing cardio, his HRV also tripled into 3 months. His baseline was at 90, 80, 90, and then it went up to like 180, which was insane. The moment he went back to his hometown, he stopped doing cardio and he only stuck to weightlifting. And then his baseline of HRV also went down to 80, back to 80s again. So I do believe the heart rate part plays a significant role in like improving HRV.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Well, then I guess the mystery here is that I'm probably doing pussy cardios at this point because my heart rate is much higher when I'm weightlifting than when I'm doing cardio.
Cardio, yeah.
Yeah.
Cardio, we want to, yeah, we want to raise the heart rate as much as possible. But it's not like you do not want to do like zone 4, 5 cardio every single day. You only want to do that once a week. And then for the rest of the week, you want to actually be in a very low heart rate zone so that your body can actually recover and build that resilience. So how I like to think about it is that 80% of the workout where you're doing it easy is to build that foundation of how hard you can go for that one day of where you're doing that intense cardio. So it's kind of building that moment up. And for the rest of like 5, 6 days out of the week, even if I do cardio, it's like I'm at really low heart rate zone, like 110, 90, around that zone. So that's how I would like approach it if someone was to decide to optimize for HRV at least.
Just recently, the scientific part of the internet, YouTubers started talking about a new paper that came out for a very long time. The bodybuilding days, zone 2 cardio fat burning. Perhaps if you want to improve your cardiovascular system and not fat burning is your main goal, then you go somewhere between the zone 2 and zone 3, right? Then you're pushing up the zones, although it's more of a bro science as far as I know. But there was a recent paper, meta analysis, that claimed that if you're very well trained, then zone 2 cardio makes perfect sense to you because you're doing a lot of zone 2 cardio like 5 times a week or something like that. But if you're only doing 2 or 3 times a week, then you probably go to zone 3, 4, 5 because that will improve your cardiovascular system and everything else better than if you would keep being in zone 2. So that's something that's buzzing right now. I don't know if you heard about that. Simland created an interview with the authors of the study.
Saying so people you would want to go beyond zone 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, yeah, and you get the same benefit,
Mhm.
but with less amount of work
Right.
because you don't do that much.
I think the main thing is how, like, again, like HRV is a metric of how resilient you are to stress. So if you can recover, fully recover, and actually get a high HRV, absolutely. The only main issue I see is if you're constantly doing zone 3 in that middle zone every single day, and trying to push zone 4 that 1 week, 1 day at a time, it becomes like physically painful and your body can't take it where I feel like if you were to train zone 1 and 2, even if you don't feel like you got the workout in, even if you feel like this wasn't a good workout, you're like on the day you're doing zone 4 to zone 5 training, you'll be able to push a lot harder and pushing that like day, pushing zone 4 to 5 for a long duration of time, that's what I think helps you actually increase the HRV and actually get it up. Instead of doing zones 3 every single day and just try and get a like stable baseline, doing like really low intense training and then doing one hard training. I think that's what like really helped me boost my HRV.
Let's talk about what helped you boost your HRV. Let's go from the beginning. So first of all, how did it even occur to you that, oh, I should improve my HRV?
Surprisingly, like 3 years ago, I had a whoop. I wasn't too into health, but I had a whoop, but my lifestyle was terrible. At 6, I would work out with a friend, and then at 7, we would go to, like, a sports bar to grab a burger and then eat dinner, and then after I come back, I would want to work on some projects and then I would pop an energy drink and then like kind of work on my project until like 2, 3 a.m. And then I would have to sleep and then wake up at 8 to go work or actually out at the time I was going to school. So I would go to school. My lifestyle was just terrible and my HRV was really low. But I also had a friend who was also taking care of health. And one day I was on a call with him. He was asking me like, "Hold on, like, what do you think the most important thing in life is?" And he was telling me it's like health. If you don't have a healthy body, you're not going to be able to do the things you like to do. Just make sure you prioritize that because he also knew my lifestyle was terrible. And then ever since that, it kind of stuck to me how important it is. And I started switching some habits. Like slept more. I like ate better. I didn't do like these bad habits I used to do, like energy drinks. I quit energy drinks altogether.
Or when did your HRV started to, did it already start to go up at this point?
At that point, when I was quitting everything and, like, trying to get it, I did not see any improvements at all. For a whole month or 2, like, it was just around the 70s and 80s. Like, interestingly, like, what actually boosted my HRV was 3 to 4 months after. This was when, like, I was living with friends. Like, I usually live with friends for 2 to 3 months out of the year, and we were just dialed in on sleep and morning exercise and everything. That's when, like, all of us, our HRV started, like, 2 to 3xing all at once, and our habits were dialed in, and I think it takes a little time for our body to get to this original base, and then it actually starts, like, getting healthier.
The single thing that gave you the most results, the 2 to 3x, you would attribute that to
I think the single most important thing was cardio. Cardio was one thing,
car.
and the second thing would be sleep, getting the best type of sleep, because I think the number before I was living with my friends, the thing I was doing differently was I thought I was getting good sleep. I thought I was getting 7 hours of sleep, but I was still, like, on my laptop, on my phone, and everything. But when my friends and I were living together, the thing that we did differently was we put the airplane mode on our phone, no electronics, and then just straight up, like, we would just sleep at, like, 8 PM and then wake up at, like, 5 AM, and that would be, like, the whole routine, and also, I think the amount of sleep doesn't matter as much as, like, if you're going to bed at the same time. Because when I was living alone, when my HRV wasn't going up, my sleeping schedule was, like, I would sleep sometimes at 11, I would sleep sometimes at 9, like, 8, like, it would be all over the place. But when you have friends that's, like, keeps you accountable, if it's, like, 8, you turn off the lights, you go to sleep, you have no choice but to sleep. That's important, and keeping a cool temperature really matters because at least in Whoop, you have like a stress monitor. And when I don't use 8 sleep, sometimes my stress could like fluctuate a little bit here and there. But if I set my mattress temperature to like 13 degrees Celsius and then slowly elevated over time 15 degrees to 17 degrees. While it's excruciatingly cold, it's physically uncomfortable when you're sleeping, but then your resting heart rate goes down, your like stress monitor is like straight up flat. So I noticed that helps a lot with sleep.
You see, you mentioned this 13 degrees bed last time, and I was blowing my mind. Since then, I started doing that only when I go to sleep, and then it increases throughout the night. But when I go to sleep, I set it to 13 degrees, and it helps me fall asleep so fast. It's
Right.
great. Yeah, unfortunately, my sleep machine, it's a Sleep Me Dog Pro just broke. So there is that. But it was great while it lasted.
Yeah, during the winter time, like I don't
Oh,
do
yeah.
13 degrees. I do maybe like 15, 16 because like it's just physically cold. But
Yeah.
during the summer, 13 is like perfect.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. When you're throughout the day, you're hot, then you want really cold sleep. But when you're cold throughout the day, I guess you're not that cold because you're living in a developed world. Imagine that you would be living in I don't know, in an island where it gets really cold throughout the day, but you just end up having a really hot bed. I think you would choose the hot bed at that time.
100%.
Well, were there any experiments that you did that did not work?
Did not work. Yeah, I tried both warm shower before night and cold shower before night. I did it for 30 days each just to test it out. Warm shower was interestingly over a 90-minute period, you would see a slow decay of like lowering stress over time because it slowly cools your body. As for cold shower, what ended up happening was it would instantly lower my stress. My heart rate would instantly be at 40 degrees when I get out of the shower. And then also, if you look at the stress monitor, it instantly dips. But what ends up happening is as your body warms up, your stress curve starts going up. And when you're about to sleep, I notice it gives you a higher stress. So cold shower at night is not too optimal for sleep based on like the things I've tested. And then
Hmm.
also the vagus nerve stimulator. I
Yeah, I'm
tried it
wondering what
and
happened with that.
sensates and like I even bought a neurosim to test it out. Those didn't work as like sometimes with the Vegas, at least for Pulsetto, I felt like it was working a little bit because I'll feel drowsy when I do it. But the problem with that was there was light happening. There's a lot of bright light like flashing in the neck. And also because you have like you need to use a gel to like stimulate it, you would have to wipe a towel and then put it back in. And by the time you do that, you're back awake, and it's just kind of like a vicious cycle. So I noticed while I feel like it kind of works, but it's not. It doesn't true. It didn't help me as much as what the advertisement says or the like what the research would say.
I see, I see. You know, another thing that I noticed, I just got this NeuroSim as well because, as I told you, nothing moves my HRV. But one thing that happens is that my ear starts to hurt after, I don't know, 10 minutes. And then I have to change position, 10 minutes, change position again. Did you have as well
Yeah,
something?
sometimes it gets intense. Like you feel it.
So, cardio is the largest thing. Would you say the cold night is the second largest?
Like in a bigger picture, just high stress in the morning is the biggest thing, and then getting low stress is the second most important thing because as we age, that fluctuation of high stress in the morning and low stress at night, that decays over time. And what ends up happening is when it becomes a flat line, your body doesn't know what day it is, and it becomes really hard for to get the circadian rhythm, like know what circadian rhythm it is. And I think that's where your body's not going to recover as much if you don't have that fluctuation. So high stress in the morning, which is cardio. cardio in the morning, eating early is also like I would say the second bottleneck. I notice not getting stressed at night is important. So cold temperature definitely helps. But if you eat at night, if you eat before bed, your whole blood is going to go to the gut instead of recovering the whole body and your heart and everything. So try and finishing meals at least 3 to 4 hours before bed would be like highly recommended. I take it to the extreme and I finish everything by 12 p.m. But yeah, eating early and then also like even if you're eating healthy, I think eating the right amount helps a lot because if you're eating too much, one thing I've noticed is it peaks your heart, like it peaks your stress monitor. For me, I get lower energy because I feel a little drowsy because sometimes your food starts digesting, blood goes to the gut, and then you kind of lose focus over time. So I still try to eat about 2,500 calories per day. But yeah, just keeping calories a little low is important, and then hydration.
If you're eating too much, that's when the cold bed really shines.
Yeah. But I also think, like, HRV is just one dimension of health. Like, it's really good to optimize HRV, but I think if you break a bone at the age of 60, then it's like having high HRV doesn't matter because you lose the capability of exercise. So, like, doing weight training, training your strength and building muscle, which would sacrifice a little bit of, like, your HRV, but I still say even if there's, like, a trade-off, it's pretty important to be multidimensional and train all aspects for health.
Let me ask something along those lines. Not exactly, but I'm wondering this is the same question for every single health metric. HRV, are you measuring something that's your health, or high HRV is causing good health? Is it the end result of good health, or is it a causation of good health?
I think it's the causation of good health because the HRV is basically an indication of how resilient you are to stress. If you're resilient to stress, that means you can do more things.
You're hitting an HRV of around 200. What's the optimal here? Are you aiming for 300, or are you moving to other metrics?
Right now, I'm actually building myself back up to be able to run like 3 to 4 hours during the weekend and see if there's like a limit to how much HRV you can increase.
Okay. Another thing, is HRV useful for the average person, or is it a biohacker territory? What
I
do you think?
I think it's more like if you don't measure your health, you won't know what the problem is. But basically, if you can measure it and see it in numerical values, there's a way for you to optimize it and get healthier. Like say for example, people talk about how much money we saved up. We see that in numerical values and we understand how much if we're like getting richer or if we're getting poorer. But how do we measure if we're actually getting healthier? There's no numerical value, but if we could actually measure HRV as an average person, at least that's one indication of okay, we're getting a little more healthier, we're getting more resilient to stress. I think that's why average people should start like consider measuring like health. And I think Apple Watch has like measures HRV these days, so I think most people could get access to it.
Which is more important, heart rate variability or resting heart rate?
I think both goes together. So if you basically like train for heart rate variability, your resting heart rate will naturally go to the 40s. I noticed one thing that doesn't correlate with HRV and resting heart rate is respiratory rate, which is how many breaths you take per minute. So my respiratory rate when I first started was about like 16, 15 around that range. But throughout the year, that was the only metric that I wasn't able to get it down until I started incorporating breath work. So I would do more like Wim Hof breathing and stuff like box breathing. That helped me get it down to about like 12, sometimes like 13 around that range. Practicing how you breathe, I think that's also really important.
I see. I see. Yeah, that was also something that I've been doing for quite a long time, doing all kinds of breathing exercises. I'm doing different ones, right? So started out with CO2 tolerance, carbon dioxide tolerance, and Wim Hof breathing, and hold your breath. What else? Walking by breath holding. Did some nebulizing, progressive overload. Because I was smoking for a long time, and I decided to, all right, well, I guess I just gonna do all kinds of breathing exercises throughout a couple of years. Right now, I'm learning to play the flute
Oh,
or the recorder.
I think that's definitely gonna help your respiratory rate.
Yeah, I was thinking that, but I'm not sure if that helps at all. Final thought: HRV in general, how the internet perceives it, overrated or underrated?
I don't think it's overrated or underrated. People who know about HRV would like kind of like me would like sometimes obsess over it. Like there's also a lot of people who don't know about it. But I would say to kind of wrap it up, if if you don't have a lot of time but still want to maximize HRV, what I would do is in the morning, go get your morning sunlight, drink water, and then go do some kind of cardio, even if it's like 20-30 minutes. That's going to help you a lot. So just do those three things. Try and finish your meal early. Another thing is like if you're for diet, if you're eating processed foods, no matter how good your habit is, no matter if you do cardio or if you do whatever, it will destroy your HRV. You have to eliminate processed foods altogether. So try and stick with a whole food diet. Then in the evening, try and dim your light and then lower temperature. Those two, just optimize. You go to sleep at the same time every single day. So that would be kind of like the final wrap up to optimizing HRV.
It's perfect. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. It was fun.